Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I'll give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. Today, I would like to introduce you to Mica L. Anders. With one simple question about her own past, Mica has forged a path as a professional genealogist and artistic placemaker, specializing in African American and Midwestern U.S. genealogy. So Mica is here to explain what all of that means, why she got interested in all of this, and I'm excited to hear more from her today. So thank you so much, Mica. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hello, all. My name is Mica L. Anders, and I am a genealogist. I'm a people finder. I like to solve family mysteries, and I help uncover forgotten pasts and bring them back to light through all the stories of our ancestors. I got into it accidentally. So, again, I'm also an artist. I have an MFA in visual arts. And when I was getting my MFA, I actually did for my thesis the genealogy of 11 people. And I turned those into art pieces. And through that work, I really found that I enjoy doing other people's family history. So, a lot of people are kind of like, I just want to know who I am and where I came from. But for me, learning about other people and helping reintroduce them to their ancestors was so amazing. And getting to hear all these stories about people's lives. And I think, kind of like even with your podcast, right? Through learning about others, we also do still learn about ourselves as well. So it's just been a really fun journey.
So what kind of made you dive further into becoming a genealogist from originally just having more of a career in visual arts or a plan for a career in visual arts?
Yeah, so it was like an accidental path where the doors just kept opening and I just kept walking through them. So again, visual arts degree, I was a teaching artist, I was a public artist, do a lot of mosaics, a lot of photography. Um, and I was doing an art project. I was making a mini golf hole for this art installation where, all these different mini golf holes for a light rail opening in town. And I live in Minnesota. And for both of my golf holes that I was commissioned to make, they had a history component, right? Because a lot of my art and history, they've always tied together. And for one of them, it was about the history of this historically Black neighborhood that I actually live in. And so I called some of the elders and I said, hey, do you have pictures? I want to put them on my mini golf hole, which is a very weird thing to ask people. Like, what? Um, and they said, no, I donated a bunch to the Historical Society. Cool. So I go down to the Historical Society, State Historical Society, and they have all these images, but they haven't been cataloged yet. So because I have nothing else to do, I volunteered to catalog and archive this huge collection of images. So I was going through them. I was trying to identify who the people were and learn about their stories. And it was really fun. And so they got to know me at the State Historical Society. And they said, hey, do you do more than this? Like, you do genealogy and stuff, right? I said, yeah. They said, could you do some of that for us, as a keynote speaker and all these things? So it was literally this super random path. So that, and then also, I was saying earlier, right, I did these 11 genealogy projects as my art thesis. And some of my very first clients were those friends who said, hey, I know you kind of stopped where you needed to for your art project, but could you keep going? And then they told other people. And so, like I said, it was super accidental. But I just really enjoyed it. And so for a while, I was balancing two full-time careers. Highly don't recommend. So I was like a full-time teaching artist and public artist. And I also had this genealogy career where I was doing research for clients. And then I started doing work for historical societies and doing this research on early African American history and turning into exhibits, which was like, whoa, this is a lot. So after 10 plus years as a teaching artist, I was teaching artist of the year. I was like, that seems like a good place to retire. Let me slow that career down and let's ramp this other one up. So that's kind of the roundabout way it all happened. And I still get to use my art because I do exhibits and things like that.
So what was it like then diving into genealogy full time and being able to put all of the energy into it instead of having it full time, but then also having a other full time career?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just ridiculous to even think about like how many hours I was working. So It was a lot. So because it started randomly, I never got a business foundation underneath it. So, like, I wasn't technically an LLC and I didn't really have any business structures put together. So, trying to work forwards and backwards simultaneously was really interesting. It let me know how great I did without having a business structure and how many huge holes I had and where I could have been had I started off, with like an LLC and a business checking account and all of these things that would have been really helpful places to start. But diving in full time, um, in a lot of ways has been really rewarding, but in other ways, it took my safety net away. So now when all the eggs are in this one basket, there's no fail safe. Like, okay, you have to make this work. And I've been able to, um, because I've had some amazing clients and amazing recommendations and, radio programs and different things I've been on where people have learned who I am. But being able to spend full time, like sitting in my pajamas, doing my research or flying out to different places to meet with clients or to go to archives. Like I got to fly to Macon, Georgia when my clients flew me out there for a few days to just sit in the archives. How amazing. I know it's so funny. I brought one of my research assistants with me and the two of us were out there and we worked really long hours. And at night we come back to the hotel and think like, this is our job. Like we're at work right now, but it's kind of like vacation, but we're spending all days in libraries and courthouses and these giant deed books and just having a great time. So I feel really fortunate that I enjoy what I do and that I've been able to move it into a career.
Yeah, I mean, to hear the kind of accidental journey and to being able to grow it to something more and enjoy it so much. So, what kind of research are you uncovering for people and these exhibits you are putting on? Can you kind of explain what all of that entails that you're helping people learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple different clients. One type of client I have is somebody who has heard family stories for years. Maybe they've done a little research on their own, but they've gotten stuck. If they're an African American client or somebody who has some African American in their family tree, they may have gotten stuck at enslavement. They may be trying to figure out sort of how do we get past 1870? How do I learn more about my enslaved ancestors? And sometimes that research is harder to do without as much training or as many resources available. I have a lot of different databases I have access to, and I've made a lot of relationships with different people to help get access to different things that I might not have myself. And I have a lot of tricks that I've learned over the years. I've taken so many classes and things like that. So that's one client. Another type of client I have is somebody who really is just curious. Maybe they haven't done much research. Maybe they just kind of want to get a sense of like, who am I? And who are these people? And maybe who was I named after? I always heard I was named after grandma so and so, but who was she, right? So they really want those stories. And that's important for what I do for all of my clients is a lot of times in genealogy, people just want a big tree. They just want a whole bunch of names. They want to know who was born when, where were they born, what country, and things like that. But I work really hard to take just those names and dates and turn them into humans with stories and really learn about their lives. So again, that's another kind of client. The other type of client I have a lot of are people who've maybe taken a DNA test. Maybe they just don't quite know what to do with the results because all of a sudden you have all these cousins. You're like, who are all these people I'm related to? I don't know any of these names. Or they took a DNA test and learned something unexpected. So sometimes people take a DNA test and they find out one of their parents or grandparents isn't who they thought they were. They find out somebody was adopted, sometimes themselves, sometimes a relative. Sometimes they knew they were adopted already. And so they're just trying to learn more about their bio families. So those are kind of my main clients on the genealogy side. On the exhibit design, I've been really fortunate to work with various historical societies in Minnesota and some city governments in Minnesota and Iowa, both, to try and uncover early African American history. So they hire me and my team, and we research and often uncover histories that have been lost for time. And then we turn those into exhibits that stay in the community or travel around, so that a community that may have thought, oh, we're just Norwegian, it's always been the Norwegians and the Swedes that lived here, they learn that maybe their really early history, Minnesota was founded in 1858, so we're kind of a newer, in some senses, area. But it helps people understand, like, yeah, that might be what the town looks like now, but actually a lot of these places were a lot more diverse early on. And then just with time and circumstance, they shifted.
And so you've mentioned a team and you've mentioned courses you have taken. So
Mhm.
how has all of that come about?
Yeah. So the thing about being a genealogist is there's just now starting to be official degrees that you can get. So most of the people who I know who are professional genealogists, whether they are a CG certified genealogist, associated, whatever they have, or if they're just a professional genealogist, which is what I am, um, most of us went to school for something else. So there wasn't just a program for genealogy. So we do other things. There's institutes, which are usually week-long courses where you go, you stay maybe in Pittsburgh or in Georgia for some of these institutes, and you have one topic that you research and learn about all day for an entire week. Maybe it's the Southern United States, maybe it's land records, maybe it's early African American history, something like that. And so most of our work is through these really immersive, deep dive ways of learning. So it's almost like, a college course, right? We also have other things we've done, like there's a thing called ProGen Study Group, which a lot of us have also taken. And that's to become a professional genealogist. Our program was, I think, 18 months. It's shorter now. But for that long, we really dive into all the different aspects of becoming a professional genealogist and how to write reports and all the different stuff like that. So that's how that works, is really continuing education. And it never ends, because even though we're learning about the past, the tools and resources available to us are always changing. So we have to stay informed and have to stay educated and in a learning mode to make sure that we always know what's going on in our field. In terms of my team, I have two research assistants who work on a lot of my projects with me. And I have a lovely graphic and layout designer who helps me with the exhibits. Um, so that's my small but mighty little background team. I also have my niece sometimes helps me with some of my social media as well. But it's a lot of research to do on your own, especially as I've grown. And to make sure, it's important to me that, clients can be really excited. And then to say, okay, well, pay me your money, and in 4 months, I'll tell you what I found. That's like, oh my gosh, what? So having a team has allowed me to work more efficiently and a little faster. So one person will look at census, one person will look at vital records, one person will be looking in the newspapers and at maps. So then we take all of that and put it together to put our reports ready for our clients to learn about their history.
Now, when you're putting together these reports, do you have moments where you're not able to answer the client's questions?
Yes. It's so hard to be in that situation, because people come with these great questions, can you find my long lost so and so? Or, can you prove that I have Native American heritage? And sometimes we can, and it's amazing. And other times we can't. And in my contract, it says we're going to do our best, but we can't guarantee it. But part of what's really important to me is, even if we can't answer the specific question you asked, we want to share stories about the people we did find along the way. So maybe you wanted to know more about great grandma Sue, but great grandma Sue doesn't exist in any records we've found yet before she married great grandpa whomever. So instead of just saying we couldn't find her, we'll say, okay, well, we couldn't find any records on her parents or anything like that. But here's what we learned about her marriage. Here's what we learned about her life. Here's what we learned about the town she lived in. Here's some things we learned about her other kids besides whoever your direct relative is. So it's just really important that even if we can't find that specific thing, we still give people as much as we can find. And we also give a list of the things we tried. It's called a negative search. So, like, here's all the places we looked and didn't find anything. So that way, if they want to look on their own or maybe hire somebody else, if they didn't think we did a good enough job, which hasn't happened, but in case, or if they just want to have a thing to look at, we can say, these are the ways we tried. So they can really see we did our due diligence and we tried the best we could.
And when you're producing these reports with all of this information, what kind of like goes into that to make it understandable, even just with all of the information you're gathering? How does it become real?
Yeah, so that's something that I really pride myself on with how I run my company is a lot of genealogy reports only make sense to other genealogists. And that's not helpful at all. So if you don't know what some of the terms are that we use and things like that, getting that report doesn't do anything for you. Or just to get the report and say, here's a bunch of records. Okay, well, what do I do with them? I don't know how to read a census, for example. So when we write our reports, when I write a lot of them. So when we write our reports, they start from a place of story. And even if the records we found were in a different order, I write them chronologically. So it really tells somebody's life story. So I'll start with maybe the most recent ancestor and tell their story and then talk about their spouse and some of their kids. And then we'll just go back in time. And it reads more like a narrative. So it's something that you could take and share with family members who don't know anything about genealogy, have never heard of it, don't know how to read a chart, and they'd be able to take that and learn about their ancestors. And then I try and add the images into it. So like maybe I'll find a census record and I'll cut out the part about your family and put it right into the record and then describe it. So it's not just a random document with no description. And then I'll put the full one in the back. There's always a huge attachment in the back with all kinds of like images of all the different documents we find. And then I give them a new family tree as well. So they can see like, here's where we started in our research and here's all this stuff we learned along the way.
And if you're answering specific questions, do you kind of, like you mentioned how if you might not be able to answer like the exact questions, but you can answer like tangentially, is there a point when like you have to say like, we're stopping, like the tree's not gonna get you all the way back to like the first king of England?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So parameters are the key, right? So when I work with people, I kind of say, okay, what is your goal? I work in packages. I found that over the years, I've been doing this professionally for over 10 years. So that has been the key. Rather than saying, hire me for a certain number of hours. And then, of course, who knows what you can accomplish in an hour? All the records might just fall in your lap, but they might not. So I say, okay, is your goal to find one person? Is your goal to kind of fill out a line of people, maybe 3 generations, or maybe a bigger part of your tree? So we set some parameters. So it's like, I will not be finding the King of England in this package. The package you hired me for gets you from maybe grandma's parents, and grandma's grandparents. And that's going to be kind of, and then any, siblings, aunts, uncles, and things like that. So having those parameters and really setting those expectations on the front end is really, really helpful. But also, I would say, I always ask people, what is your main goal? But also, what are some secondary goals? So I want to make sure that even if I didn't find, Grandma Sue's early childhood, I did accomplish some of the other things that they were hoping for. Because you want to make sure people feel like they've accomplished something and they got something they wanted for paying all that money, right? And so it feels so much better to be like, I found something. Like, it's a terrible gift to say, well, I got nothing for you, but here's some fun facts, right? I want to say, okay, well, I didn't meet your main goal, but your secondary and third goal we were able to achieve.
And so what sort of maybe like interesting things have you found throughout all of this that you may not have been expecting, or like maybe a question that like came to you and you were like, yeah, that's not going to happen, but we'll do our best. We're going to find these other things for you. And it did come to fruition. What things kind of like stand out for you in this world?
So I have so many. So one that was really cool was I had a client who was stuck at grandpa. And grandpa was grandpa slash great grandpa. It was a mother and a daughter. So it was was the mother's grandpa. Stuck. Didn't know anything past him. His name, super common first name, super common last name. Smith, right? Smith. So, and then they were a Smith and a Jones. Then they married. Like what? So didn't have much to work with, right? So they hired me to say, can you get any further back? And I said, I'll try. And all the records were kind of leading in different paths and nothing was coming together. But eventually I asked this random question. I just said, have you guys ever had a family reunion on this branch of your family? Like, yeah. I said, where was it? And they said it was in such and such Arkansas. I was like, okay. So now I at least have like a county and a last name. And those pieces of information and a little bit of information from one death certificate got me not only to the next generation, but back 5 more generations. I was able to do that. And then I found a Freedmen's Bureau record that had the names of their family members as enslaved people. It had the names of their enslavers. It had the names of people's spouses, their siblings, their parents. And then the DNA matched all of it. So it's kind of like, okay, I don't know if I'm on the right track. And the DNA, none of those names had meant anything. So I couldn't do anything with them. But by moving the paper trail back, I now was able to move the DNA back along with it. That was so amazing. And I definitely thought I was going to struggle on that one.
I mean, it sounds like it. You know, we were talking before this about how, you know, I have some relatives who are very into family trees, but like I have an uncommon last name. So like it's just different when you've got a Smith and a Jones.
Right. Yeah. It's like, where are we going to go? I have another client. It's a Robinson and a Johnson. What? Oh, how are we marrying these common names to these common names? Another really interesting story was I had a client who wanted to learn more about their mom's dad. Also mom's dad. Yeah, so mom's dad. And they knew almost nothing. And it turns out that mom's dad was raised in a foster home that wasn't a foster home at the time. So he ended up taking the name of the people who raised him. And that's why we weren't able to find anything. So as we went through census records, and again, the census comes out every 10 years, and it lists all of the people who live in a household together. And it lists their relationships to each other, which are not always accurate. So in this case, every census, it listed this woman as the mother of all of these children. But then 10 years later, these kids would be different kids. And all of a sudden you're like, well, this kid was only 3, so they should still be in the house at 13, but they're not. And so we learned that this woman was really like the community foster mom, nothing official. And it was just all of a sudden, we still weren't able to go back any further on this family line because, again, we have no idea what this person's biological last name was because everything was in the name of the person who'd raised him. But just that story gave so much back to this person because at the end of the day, although they weren't biologically related to this woman, we now know who raised this person. We have a better sense of what the environment was they were raised in. We got a sense from different newspapers and things about how loving she was and how she really cared for these children. And you could follow some of them that even weren't biologically related. The kids stayed together and moved as adults to different places. And so I was still able to give this amazing story to this client, even though technically we didn't get the name of the bio parents.
Right. You know, it's so fascinating to hear how these stories come about and how you can answer some questions and figure out, you know, what you can just learn in the depths of the archives. And so how much time would you say is spent more in the realm of individual client genealogy compared to the more historical society putting on exhibits and diving more into like community-based research?
Right now, it's about 50-50. I've been trying to figure out like where I want it to go, right? Because the exhibits, to be very frank, pay more. right? They're bigger, they're larger, but they also take longer. So there's that trade off. But um, sometimes we're given so many more research hours that we get to dive so deeply into these community histories that we're able to uncover things that in a client case we might just never have enough hours to get to. And so that can be really amazing and rewarding. But there's something about the individual clients and knowing you're giving an actual person something, right? It's one thing to give it to the community, and that's beautiful. But to be able to give it back to individuals has a different feel to it, I would say. But something we've been starting to incorporate into the community histories is descendant work. So we're taking time now that we're uncovering these early African American histories in these towns. What we're starting to notice is the descendants of those early African Americans don't know. They often have no clue of this history. They don't know. Maybe one of their ancestors was the first barber in the town, or they were the first whatever, right? And they don't know. And so it's been this other neat thing that I've been able to do through community histories is connect with descendants. And then it becomes not only a community history, but it comes back to being a personal history as well.
And how do you kind of make those connections with descendants if they weren't like the original person asking you to do this research?
So that's when, like we were talking before we started, we have to become super sleuth experts and get our private investigator skills and our magnifying glass out. So then we really start using tools like the white pages, which actually still exists in certain forms, right? We don't think about it as the phone book that comes to our house, but some of those things still exist. We use Facebook a lot to find people. And eventually we have to do a reach out. Now the reach out is the scariest part for me as an introvert and also as somebody who doesn't love rejection. Um, Reaching out to an anonymous person and saying, "Hey, I know that you descend from this person who's your third great grandfather who you may have never heard of. We want to share this information with you." And then having them accept that or not accept that, or try and figure out, like, why do you know that? And how did you find me? Right? It's kind of creepy. Um, but most people receive it really well. So most people are just really grateful for the information and happy to help. And sometimes they have photos that we've never seen or things that will actually enhance the exhibit in ways that we would have had no other access to without being able to reach out and contact them.
And so then with all of your work, doing all of this, learning about archives and history of people, how have you, if at all, kind of like taken that into your own life to make sure, your history is, being found and kind of, your own family tree and all of that work? How have you taken this into your own personal stories?
So, like most people, my family is the worst researched of all of the other work that I do because I have to do it in my downtime. um, so, my family, one thing I do, I have a daughter, and so I talk to her about her ancestors. And she has a little kids' tree that I made for her. So she was able to sort of see growing up. And then she was named, her middle name is after one of her ancestors. So we talk about that. And although I don't do a great job actively researching my family as much as I should, at this time, I'm pretty far back on a lot of the lines already. But I don't have as many stories as I would like to on my own family. But the ones I do have, I make sure to share with her. I make sure to document them and in trees like on Ancestry and things like that. So they exist outside of just me so that one day they can be passed on to her. And then any other family members who are trying to connect and learn more, they can do that as well.
And is Ancestry kind of like the main player in that sort of more public facing game that you can put it out there, or are there other places that people are kind of making this connection in their histories?
There's a few places. So some people like Ancestry. Some people don't because you have to pay. So it has a subscription fee that changes and increases regularly. Some people use familysearch.org. It's run by the Mormon Church, which for some people is okay. For other people, they'd prefer not to have their information on there. Um, a third site that people are starting to use more and more is called WikiTree. And it's just like you would think, it's sort of crowdsourced and anybody can put information on there. There's groups that get together and have WikiTree marathons to sit together and really like take the time, build out their own tree or build out community trees or important people's trees. They might go on and say, oh, such and such celebrity, let's build their tree out on WikiTree. People do all kinds of stuff. And so that's a sort of a source that right now feels outside of the commercial aspects of things. It feels a little bit more community run. So that's a place more and more people are starting to put their information as well.
And so, how much are you connecting with other people, in whether it's in this community of like people who are just fascinated with it on like WikiTree compared to people who are going the professional genealogy route or getting these degrees that now exist? And also just like the casual interest person, like how is all of that, community impacting your life?
So I have been fortunate to run in a few different fields, right? So I have friends and colleagues who are hobbyists. Sometimes they're my amazing research volunteers. Sometimes I put out a call and say, hey, I'm doing a big community project and I would love volunteer assistance. And some people who maybe are newer and want some more experience or want to kind of shadow what I do professionally and learn some tips and tricks along the way, they'll come in and work as volunteers on some of our bigger projects. We have kind of a really big Facebook and Instagram nerdy community that we've created. It's great. We have all kinds of memes and jokes and get to just talk about all these silly genealogy things in groups on Facebook more. And then on Instagram, just, in regular Instagram community through what people are sharing in their stories and things like that. So that community is really made up of a blend of people who do it professionally, people do it as a hobby, and everything in between, and people who are just interested. So those are really the two places we kind of hang out in the virtual world. Again, like I said, we have all these different institutes, and those are just a really fun, again, super nerdy place to be where we can all just be our best nerdy selves and talk genealogy. At some of the conferences, we'll stay up all night on our laptops in the lobby, researching together and talking about our findings, because a lot of us are introverts by nature, which I think you kind of have to be to sit for hours alone in front of your computer. But we also get really excited to talk about what we found. And sometimes even just sort of parallel researching. So when you find something cool, you can shout it out to the room and everybody's really excited for you. Can be really fun too.
And so then, because you kind of fell into this accidentally, but now have a big passion for it, are you still doing more physical media in what you originally were passionate about outside of, having general exhibits?
So I don't do a great job of making a lot of things at home. Part of my art path took me to public art for a reason. And that was after having an undergrad and a graduate degree in visual arts. I had so much stuff, so many supplies, so many half done projects, so many files of images. And it was just like, okay, I really like public art because I get to make it and then it leaves my house and goes out into the world, right? So I don't do as many things to just have at home because then they just start to collect again. But I keep trying to find ways to bring it back. So I recently did a project that's actually almost finished where we did mosaic markers that are going at the grave sites of the early African Americans in a county in Minnesota. And so I got to make mosaics, but they're leaving my house. And I got to do it in community, which is my favorite way to make art. But my main art that I do just for me is coloring. I love a color by number. They are relaxing. I do them before bed. I do them sometimes on my iPad, sometimes in real coloring books. I'll go to meetings. People are like, what is that? Oh, that's my markers. I got my whole marker tote with me because you got to have all the shades of green, right, for your color by number. So that's one of the ways I stay creative. I also dance, but in terms of my visual arts, it's really through coloring right now that I keep that hobby level art and that creativity going.
And what do you do with your color by numbers such that if they're not digitally taking up space?
They go in the recycling. I have a folder, and once the folders, it's just a 2-pocket folder. Once it's getting full, they just got to go. The experience was the making. You're right. It's really about process, not product. So after a while, they just go in recycling. I don't really revisit them. I know people who number them and they put dates on them. I don't do any of that stuff. They live with me for a while. I'm like, oh, that one was cool. And eventually it goes in recycling. I try and do them on, like I make copies from books. So I bought all these books, but again, it's this weird thing where like I don't want to mess up the book, right? So I make copies of them and color the copies instead. But I try to use like the back of some other piece of paper. Like I'll print on some scratch paper. So I feel like, oh, it's not being wasted. It's not new paper. And that's my way of working around that.
Yeah, but to hear, the process, not product, and because visual arts make a product to find like a way that it works for you at a hobby level, I think, as consumerizes, like there can just be so much to figure out, you don't want to lose this passion, but how can you make it sustainable for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Or sometimes I make things and give them away. I'll make mosaic coasters for people or, I still do photography on the side just for fun sometimes, but usually it's with my phone. That's why I got the phone I got. So it had a super fancy camera. I'll print stuff out and as gifts, I'll give people pictures of things that they're in or that I've taken. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Now, I'm not sure I have any other specific questions, but I feel like there's probably more that you could share, whether it's about like you or, this fascinating career that you have been on. So what else would you like to share with the listeners? Make sure they hear about you and your passions.
Yeah. I think the first thing is sort of not about me, but a mindset that got me where I am. And that was really just do good work and good work comes to you. So just allowing my path to open as it opened rather than feeling like, oh gosh, this isn't what my degree's in. I have to go get another degree, right? Or, oh, my degree is in this, so I have to stay in this lane. But allowing for the path to go wherever it went, right? And I still get to do all of the things. And if I look back on who I've always been a researcher. I've always been into history. I've always been into visual arts. And so being able to really accidentally mold a career that allows all of those things to sing inside of me, I just feel really grateful. And I don't think it's unique to me. I think I just didn't let fear or expectations from myself or from others stop me from going down this path.
I think that's great to share and to have people here realizing that, you aren't beholden to one path. And you're a great example of realizing, where your passions are and that it's always been a part of you. It doesn't have to be separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, at the end of all my episodes, I do ask my guests a random question. So I don't know if this will be a good question for you or not, but do you read your horoscope and what are your opinions on that?
It's a great question. So, because I actually do genealogy posts once a month about whatever that month's zodiac season is. And I tie them into genealogy. So it's a great question for me. I don't read my horoscope daily, but I do learn about my zodiac sign and the big three and things like that. And I use that information to help me understand myself and some of my idiosyncrasies. And also don't let myself be confined by it, but almost like, oh, here's an aha about myself. Um, but I love zodiac stuff. It's kind of, when I was younger, I have actually books. They're actually still on my bookshelf up here that I've had since I was in college in the early 2000s, where we would meticulously, anybody new we met, what is their zodiac sign? We have to learn about them. Are they compatible with us, even at a friendship level, which is super not healthy, but it's what we did. And so yeah, no daily horoscope, but I definitely do pay attention to my zodiac and sort of how it affects me and things like that.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. So, of course, if you would like to connect with Mica, I will be leaving social medias in the description. She is most active on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so all of those will be there. And there will also be a direct link to a resource that she recently released on her website about some places to look to do your own research. So if you want to check that out or connect with Mica, feel free to find those links in the description. Of course, our website is in the description as well. It brings you to our social media. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you'd like to go follow those pages, that support is always appreciated. The website, of course, brings you to all of our past episodes and all of the relevant social media and resource links that guests have previously provided. If you're interested in finding other fun stories, feel free to check out our archives. And of course, if you would like to connect with me, my email is in the description. That is always the best way to reach out to me. And if you'd like to support the podcast monetarily, there is a link to do that as well. So thank you so much, Mica, for spending time with me today, and to my listeners for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next time, bye.
Thank you.